Flow is absolutely available to you. And the way to do that is to first notice resistance. Notice when things are not working. I'm Charla Larston. I've been a TV writer for almost a decade, but it wasn't that long ago that quitting my day job and moving to Hollywood was nothing but a pipe dream. After lots of failures, many mistakes, and many lessons learned, I've now written for 7 TV shows, 2 features, and sold 3 TV pilots. I've done all this through imposter syndrome, burnout, and with zero roadmap. On the Working Writer podcast, I pull back the curtain on breaking in and teach screenwriters and creatives how to thrive both personally and professionally. Without further ado, let's get to work. What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Working Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Charla Larston, and in today's episode of the podcast, I want to talk about what might be holding back your creativity and keeping you from finishing your creative projects. So one of the things that I've noticed in my workshops like Productivity for Creatives and working one-on-one with writers and creatives in general is this compulsion to recreate the corporate 9-to-5 schedule that they are used to and put it into their creative work. And what I'd like to offer to you in this episode of today's podcast is the idea, first and foremost, that you as a creative have the freedom to be creative with your own productivity schedule and your own creative process. As a matter of fact, it's imperative that you create your own creative process instead of borrowing it from somewhere else, particularly from somewhere like corporations, like the 9-to-5. And I know it's like something that almost we can't help, right? Because a lot of us, most of us, myself included, have worked in a 9-to-5 job. We've worked for corporations. So we're used to the 9-to-5 clock, getting up to start work at 9 o'clock, finishing around 5 o'clock, and also creating at the scale and speed of a corporate 9-to-5 job. But what I'd like to offer to you is that creativity may not work on that same time schedule. You may not be able to work creatively from 9 to 5, and you may not be able to produce at the same scale and speed that a corporate job would require of you. But a lot of times we find ourselves putting those same structures and expectations of a corporate 9-to-5 world into our creative process. So today I want to go over 3 simple mindfulness-based practices that you can use to become aware that that's what you're doing and to change the situation, to be able to stop putting corporate 9-to-5 expectations on production and productivity into your work, and to create your own creative process, create your own structures, create your own standards and expectations of speed and output so that you can stop feeling overwhelmed and start creating at your own pace and in a way that feels good to you. So before I jump into these 3 tips, I just want to make it clear that when I'm talking about mindfulness, all I'm really talking about is bringing presence into your process. Bring presence into your process. And what I mean by that is becoming aware of the things that you're doing, the ways that you're thinking, the feelings that are coming up while you work. These are going to be really important. And when I give you these tips, you're going to know why. So the first tip is to notice resistance. Notice every time you're forcing yourself, every time something feels really sluggish, like you have to literally drag it out of you. This is something that's really important to notice because resistance is the opposite of flow, essentially. And what you're trying to get to is a sort of flow state. You're trying to get to the point where things feel effortless. And I know that may sound foreign, but that is absolutely available to you. Flow is absolutely available to you. And the way to do that is to first notice resistance. Notice when things are not working. Notice when you are physically, mentally blocked, when things feel sluggish, it's basically when your inner child is basically kicking up their feet and saying, we're not doing this. And the reason why it's important to notice that is because this is potentially a clue as to what is not working about your process, what's not working for you. General example, maybe you're waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning because you think that this is what you need to do in order to become the creative of your dreams. But maybe it actually goes against your internal clock. Maybe it's really not the best time for you to be creative. And go ahead, try the 5 a.m. thing. Try whatever you want to try. Try working on a 9 to 5 schedule. Do whatever you want to do, because a lot of the creative process is experimentation. It really is just trying to figure out what works best for me. And sometimes for some of us, it does work to do things on a 9 to 5 schedule, but for others of us, it may not. And so your first tip is really just to notice resistance. Notice when things are sluggish, when things are not working for you, when there's this internal resistant blockage to getting the work done. Because once again, it's a clue as to whether or not something may not be working for you and potentially needs to change. Tip number 2 is to notice self-criticism. So this is another thing that I notice a lot in my clients and the people that I work with, is this internal criticism whenever something that is supposed to work doesn't work for them. For instance, a lot of clients think that they're just supposed to have a creative process, that they're just supposed to know what to do, that the productivity is just going to appear out of thin air, even if they've never actually worked on that particular kind of project, they've never worked for that length of time. And then instead of recognizing that they just need to know more information, they need more practice, they need to build up their skill sets, there is this internal self-criticism like, you should have already known. Look, this is just confirming that you actually shouldn't be doing this, that you're actually not talented, that you're actually really dumb, and that you're never going to get it. Notice that internal critical voice. Notice it. Because again, it is a clue as to what might not be working for you. One of the things that you can do when you notice that critical voice show up is that instead of judging yourself along with the critical voice, agreeing with it, you may want to be more compassionate with that voice. You may want to become curious about, what is that criticism really afraid of? What is that criticism really telling me about my creative process? Is it really that I just don't know what to do? Or is it that I just need to figure it out? And maybe I have this unrealistic expectation of myself that I figure everything out immediately and that I should just know everything. What is that critical voice really helping? What is it really doing? As soon as you start to get curious about that critical voice, instead of, joining in on the judgment, it might illuminate what is really going on. What is the information that you are lacking? What is the skill set that you're lacking? Maybe the skill set that you're lacking is patience with self. Maybe it is that you have these incredibly high expectations of yourself to know and do everything perfectly immediately, and that you're not someone who gets to learn over time. So notice that critical voice, become curious about it, figure out what it's actually trying to tell you about yourself, your expectations of yourself, whether you are a perfectionist who is tearing yourself down before you're even able to learn. A lot of times that critical voice is really just fear, like a fear of inadequacy, a fear of unworthiness, that you're actually not good. And usually the cure to it is simply patience and compassion with self. So again, notice the critical voice. And the last tip is to notice ease and flow. Notice when things do come out very easily. Maybe you notice that when you're really well rested, when you're really well nourished, when you've taken time away from your creative work and you've given yourself permission to have a real break, meaning that you gave yourself permission to not feel guilty about not working on your creative work, not feel guilty about how behind you are on it. So much of this is a mental game. So much of it is an internal dialogue game, is what I've noticed when it comes to creativity, when it comes to self-confidence, when it comes to creating your creative process and feeling productive and being productive. A lot of it is really a mental game. So that's another thing to notice, is to notice the ease, notice the flow. What were the circumstances that created that ease and flow? How can I get more of that ease and flow in my life? What is blocking me from that ease and flow? And can I remove those things so that I can do my work and be creative in a way that makes sense to me? So when you do these things, you start to notice the resistance. You start to notice the self-criticism. You start to notice the ease and flow. You start to get to know yourself. You start to get to know yourself outside of the context of a 9-to-5 schedule, outside of a 9-to-5 productivity expectations, and you start to see, hey, this is my pace. This is when and how I work best. This is my creative process. So that's your work. Your work is to recognize when you are holding yourself to the standards and expectations of a regular corporation or 9-to-5 schedule, and realizing that being a creative means that you have the freedom to create your own productivity schedule, your own expectations of yourself. You truly have the freedom to do whatever it is that you want. You have the opportunity to create your own creative process. You have the opportunity to create things that feel good to you and not things that feel restrictive and overwhelming. And what a great aspect of being a creative that is. That's all I've got for today. I hope this was helpful. Until next time, get out there, get to work. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, share, or leave a comment for the algorithm gods.